In today's episode, some thoughts about some commentary from yesterday's PR student chat. I participated in I think it's a monthly Twitter chat. And one of the questions was, what are some of the best tools for staying tuned in, staying dialed into your audience? And a lot of people threw out a lot of vendor names for all these different tools and stuff, but the one that was missing from a lot of people's responses was, good old coffee cup, or beer cup, or beverage of your choice cup. And the reason this is important is that staying tuned into your audience, staying tuned into people, believe me, as someone who doesn't always love humanity, requires you to talk to humanity, requires you to talk to people, and that is the gold standard for staying in tune with your audience, is to sit down with people who are in your audience, who are representative of your audience, and ask them questions, have a conversation with them, and then take the information from that conversation, many conversations, and distill it down to a perspective, a point of view about your audience. There is no substitute for that. Now, there are ways to develop the materials to have a great focused conversation with your audience. Social media data, for example, is a great way to have a broad understanding of the topics and the words and the phrases and the language people start to use, but it's not enough by itself. The reason why social media data is not enough by itself is that it is not an interactive conversation that permits you to ask somebody why. So somebody expresses on Facebook, "Oh, I really love this coffee's flavor." And you can make note of that and say, okay, well, flavor is a dimension that you measure your coffee by. Another person says, "Oh, yeah, but that coffee's really expensive." Okay, so now you have another little piece of information there. But none of that information will give you the answer to the question of, well, just how expensive does a coffee have to be before the price dampens your willingness to buy it, even if you like the flavor, right? So you can see how we've identified some data pieces, but have not synthesized them into a question that we can ask the audience. Now, where a fair amount of market research goes wrong, particularly if it's bargain basement research, there is such a thing in research called reassuringly expensive. My friend Tom Webster, Edison Research, says that research should be reassuringly expensive, just like sushi and surgery should be reassuringly expensive. Where if the research is not informed by a lot of this exploratory analysis, then you could end up with some stuff that's not terribly helpful. But that's where that online data gathering is helpful. But at the end of the day, there is no substitute for talking to people interactively live. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with coffee. You could video chat with people and things like that, but you do want as much information about the conversation as possible. Imagine this. You're talking to somebody and say, "Hey, what's your opinion of politician X, Y, or Z?" Well, if you get just a typed response, that's one thing. If you get an audio response and say, "Well, gosh, that person, I disagree with them." Okay, you can hear a tone of voice. But if you have the data from someone's facial expressions, like, and for those listening to the audio, it made a silly face, that says a lot too. So the closer you can get to in person with all the tools for having conversations with people, the better data you'll have, because you'll be able to make note of those reactions. This is an area where, until you get really fluent natural language generation, meaning machines that can have natural conversations as flawlessly as people do, that you're not going to be able to automate it. You cannot automate the completely unstructured flow of a conversation with today's tools in mid-2018. The software is just not good enough to be able to pick up on something and say, "Oh, stop right there for a second. Why do you think that?" Or what things in your memory prompted you to have that perspective about the coffee's flavor, like, or what tastes come out of that flavor. Machines can do a lot, and certainly machines should be being used aggressively on the automation front, anything you can use to automate a repetitive process. But a conversation isn't and should not be a repetitive process. A conversation should be a highly individualized, unique process. Each time you're talking to somebody to get their perspectives, if you've just got the lowest possible paid worker out there asking questions from a sheet of paper, then yeah, you could probably do that with a machine, because you're not going to get great interpretation. You're not going to get great follow-on questions from somebody who's literally just checking boxes as they ask questions. So that cup of coffee or that beer or that video chat or that whatever is the most important tool, the most expensive tool, the least scalable tool, but the most valuable tool for staying in tune with your audience and for having conversations with them. One of the easiest ways, I think, to scale into that, to the extent that you can, is for you to go to conferences and events and schedule roundtables, schedule customer advisory boards, schedule just coffee chats with people, get their permission to record it, and then record these things and have them banked as a set of guiding lights for your business, to say, this is, when we talk to customers, this is what they say about our industry, about the problems they have, about the solutions they wish existed. If you do that, you'll have a much better base on which to draw your marketing, your messaging, your customer service, your customer experience, all those things. But you absolutely positively need to be able to sit down with somebody. And if you're not a great interviewer, you need to hire somebody who is. One of the areas I've seen go horribly wrong with market research is someone from a company asking very leading questions when the purpose is to explore, not to guide the person in a certain direction, but to explore, to figure out which direction should the company go. So again, it's one of those things that is a skill you build up over time, and there are trainings and things for it. It's actually not that dissimilar from being a really good interrogator for police or intelligence agencies, being able to elicit responses out of people without guiding them in one direction or the other. You want to be able to get as much information from them as they can, and you want to be as voluntary as possible. If you want, you can actually go and download. The U.S. government has some unclassified free public domain materials on interrogation techniques that were developed after World War II, when the government realized it was not as effective to beat people in interrogations. It's much more effective to befriend them, to sit down over coffee with them and listen to what they have to say. So make sure that somewhere in your marketing and your market research and your analytics infrastructure, there is room for human conversation, and that it is a structured part of your data intake to inform all the other stuff that you're doing. It is the best way to answer the question of why something happened in your data. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the newsletter. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. If you want help with your company's data and analytics, visit braintrustinsights.com today and let us know how we can help you.